Okay, so this is in honor of all the soldiers fighting for us and protecting us, that they should have Hashem's protection and peace, help in helping them destroy the enemy and come home safely unscathed, and also for the return of the hostages. So, just an idea from this book. This chapter, very short, it's actually 2 pages, is entitled "Be Yourself." And actually a quote from Sanhedrin, which is actually quite appropriate, apt, because you quote Sanhedrin quite frequently. Every person is obligated to say, "Because of me, Hashem created the world." And it says that, do we really understand the message and recognize we have the power to reach our goals? Are you happy with your life? Do you feel comfortable with who you are, or do you find yourself trying to conform to others and forcing yourself into a pattern that is not for you or not you? Study your own personality and develop your individuality. And it says we all have talents and skills that make us unique, but we need to develop them. No one can do it for you. Hillel the sage said, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me?" And that's from Pirkei Avot. And then it continues for another couple of seconds here. It says here, the biggest mistake people make when applying for a job is not being themselves. Be yourself. There's no one exactly like you. Each of your experiences in life are uniquely yours. Hashem placed you in a certain family, in a particular environment, to enable you to become the best you. The concept can be applied to your spouse, children, friends, and co-workers, who are also unique people with unique personalities. Encourage every person to develop his maximum potential and not to imitate others. And be yourself and don't impose your will on others. Allow them to be themselves too. Now, Damon and I think Gavin, to a lesser extent, we've discussed this on numerous occasions. Be yourself and don't try and fit in if it's not really you. And you find your place according to your personality. And as I said, you get people who try fit in with others. They try be like others, and it's not them. And I've seen it with certain individuals. They're trying to be who they are not, and they're trying to fit into a certain grouping or sect or whatever you want to call it, and they won't be accepted. And eventually, that they may unfortunately fall by the wayside because it's not them. And this is apt in terms of Yiddishkeit. We must find our place with it and develop our individuality around it, or fit our individuality into it, which we can do. That's my take on it.
Okay. So, by the way, Kevin, you must know it's from the 37th daf in Sanhedrin, and it discusses there about Cain killing Abel. And that's where the whole discussion comes from. So it's just you didn't quote the source in Sanhedrin, so it's the 37th daf. It's mainly in Aleph.
Sanhedrin, the page I quoted. Hold on one sec.
Just Sanhedrin 37.
1 second. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Sanhedrin 37a, exactly. I did not say, yeah, 37a. Apologies. You're right.
No
How did you know that, Damon?
Because I learned it from Rav Simcha Steinman.
How'd you remember the page number?
Because I learned a lot from Rav Simcha Steinman. So, in the words of Dr. Seuss, today you are you that is truer than true. There's no one alive that is youer than you. Okay.
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss, yeah.
So I work a bit differently. I don't try fit in. I try blend in because I never fit in.
Yeah.
I try blend in and notice so that I don't get kicked out. That's all. So that's why I try blend in. All right. Sorry. That's my 2 cents on that one.
It's pretty cool. All right. So let me just share Mishnah. And go from this point. And what we're going to do is I'm going to get Gavin to read it. Just hang it on. So let me share the screen. Now, what I'm going to do is Kevin is going to read because read this Mishnah.
Concerning one who steals from his fellow, or borrows money from him, or whose fellow deposited an article with him for safekeeping, if it is in a settled region, he may not return it to the owner in a wilderness. But if he accepted the money or deposit on condition that he may go out to the wilderness to return it, he may return it to the owner in the wilderness.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. So let me just tell you what we're dealing with there. So firstly, it says, listen, generally, if a person comes into possession of a stolen article, or he borrowed some money, or he was given a deposit in a settled region, that means, as opposed to wilderness, what is a wilderness? That means either a place is not developed, or a place is not considered first world and unsafe. In other words, if a place was a place of safety, like in South Africa in the 70s and 80s, I'm going to try not to get kicked out of YouTube, and now it's a place where it's like every other African cesspool, like Zimbabwe, with no infrastructure and hijackings and potholes. It's now considered a wilderness, which is any unsafe place. So, guys, this fellow wishes to rid himself of the burden of guarding the money or the object while traveling in the wilderness. So therefore, he doesn't want to be stuck with the responsibility. He tries to, well, at least attempts to return it to the owner so that that burden and responsibility, if it's lost, should be for the owner. That's according to the Rosh. And the Mishnah rules that unless the owner is in the wilderness at the time, and it is for that reason that the owner of the item or the original lender of the money requests that it be returned to him in that unstable environment, the borrower or custodian cannot force him to accept it there and put himself in danger and then defer the risk onto the person that did him a favor. That's according to Rashi. And if he returns it to the owner against the owner's will, by just shoving it to him and running off, the person that had the obligation will remain responsible for it in a court of law should anything happen to it, if harm befalls it, as the Gemara likes to say. So it's clear from the Mishnah that it's only in a wilderness or a rough environment that the owner can refuse to accept the return of the money or the deposit. If, however, the borrower or a custodian or a thief wishes to return it to him in a settled area, he's got to accept it, even if the place is far from home, and he cannot return home without traversing a wilderness. So that's according to the Torah. It's not all opinions, to say that, listen, he's in a safe zone at the moment, but he's going to have to travel through a wilderness once he's got the item. Because the only why, according to the Torah, is that even an option, even though the original owner is going to endanger himself, is because the only obligation of the borrower, the thief, or the custodian is to get it to the owner in a safe environment. If that environment is safe from where the owner travails from that point, it's the owner's responsibility. Not everybody holds by the Torah's opinion and say, look, if you're in almost like an island of safety, okay, like you're in Israel and then you have to travel to the Middle East, you might not be obligated to force the person that did you a favor to accept it, even though you're in this safe place before you traverse the wilderness or an unsafe place. Okay, so according to the Yad Ramor, he writes that the Mishnah's ruling doesn't merely govern the place in which you may return the object. It's very important. It's a general ruling requiring one to ensure that the object will be as safe upon its return as when it was received. So accordingly, guys, if a person borrows money in a certain city during a time of peace, he may not repay the money in the same city during a time of war. So it's not only about the location, it's about the circumstance. Because if the money cannot be properly guarded during such a time, it's as if it's a wilderness. Okay? Now, one other point, at first glance, the Mishnah appears to be saying that when the borrower or custodian receives the money, he stipulated that it must be returned in the wilderness, and the lender or the depositor agreed. In other words, the borrower can the borrower can force the lender to accept payment. That's what it looks like, but it's not true. Because at the end of the day, if the lender agreed to a stipulation, it's obvious that he must adhere to it. There's no need for the Mishnah to teach us that. So we've got to just look at this very, very carefully. So far we have said that it has to be taken to an area of safety. And now we're hitting the Gemara. So the Mishnah rules that a loan taken in a settled area may not be repaid in a wilderness. So the Gemara notes a contradiction to this ruling. Okay? There's a brisa that states something slightly different to our Mishnah. It says a loan can be paid anywhere. A lost article or a deposit can be returned only in its place. So the brisa seems to contradict our Mishnah, because again our Mishnah said that a loan taken in a settled area is not to be paid in a wilderness or a dangerous area. And the following brisa, by contrast, says that a loan can be paid anywhere. But it does make a distinction and says a lost article or deposit can be returned only in its place. So what is the brisa implying? That it's permissible to repay a loan even in the wilderness, and it seems to contradict our Mishnah on the first glance. So what does it mean? It means the Gemara understands the brisa to be saying that one can compel a lender to accept payment for a loan anywhere, even in the wilderness. And that seems to contradict the ruling of our Mishnah. Okay. So according to the Gemara's present understanding, just hang on a second, guys.
Do you want to start the recording
All
then?
right.
So
No, the
why?
recording's resumed. Hang on, Kev. So I just want to
Why?
explain what the Bryce's understanding is, and then I'll take any question. So the Gemara understands the Bryce to be saying that one can compel a lender to accept payment for a loan anywhere, even in an unsafe area, and that seems to contradict the ruling of our Mishnah. So that's the Gemara's present understanding, that the second part of the Bryce is saying that you can't compel an owner to accept the return of a deposit or his lost object in the wilderness. So we are seeing this difference between the cases of a deposit or a lost object versus a loan. So according to Nachmanides, he explains that one who takes charge of a deposit or a lost object is obligated to keep it safe. So taking it to the wilderness is forbidden as an act of negligence. So you can't return those objects in the wilderness. So what I'm trying to explain to you, Kevin, is why then would the Brisa seem to say that a loan, according to that Brisa, not our Mishnah, is saying that you can repay the money in the wilderness. Okay? And I'll tell you why. Because when you borrow money, you're spending that money, Kev. You're repaying it back with your own money. And therefore, you're taking your own money in the wilderness. You're not taking the item as a custodian or a lost item where you're risking somebody else's object. Here, you're risking your money. If your money is stolen in the wilderness before you hand it over, it's your money. It's not the original money lent to you. You've spent it. You're repaying it back with your money. So that's why the Brisa seems to make a distinction. Now, what we're going to see is, in fact, it's not so clear, because you don't want to endanger the person that lent you money as the borrower when he's done you a favor and is extending himself to you. Even though it's your money you're paying back and not the original money you got, you have to have a little bit of courage and appreciation for the person that extended themselves to you, especially according to our Mishnah. So Abaya said, this is what the Brisa actually means to say. Payment for a loan may be demanded anywhere. In other words, no matter where the lender demands payment, it's not the borrower that can dictate the terms, it's the lender. Because who's being done a favor here? The borrower. Because a lender isn't making money on interest. It's forbidden to charge interest. So therefore, the lender is not going to want to jeopardize his safety, nor the safety of the money, and therefore he can dictate terms. And if the borrower is in a state of desperation, he should remember that gratitude when he pays back the lender in a safe place. So therefore, the leverage goes with the lender, not the borrower. And the borrower can't argue that just as the lender can refuse to accept payment in the wilderness, so can he. And as we say, according to Rashi, since the loan was an act of kindness to the borrower, the lender has the upper hand, and he can refuse to accept payment in the wilderness. But if he wants payment there, because he's going overseas, can take the payment there if he wishes. Okay? So that's one of the things to bear in mind. Now, so that was a buyer. So the return of a lost article or a deposit can be demanded only in its place. So since the one returning the lost article or the deposit didn't come in possession of it through an act of kindness on the part of the owner doesn't have the upper hand here in negotiations, right? So if he gives the custodian the deposit in one city and the custodian find themselves together in another city with the depositor, he can't demand that the custodian return the article there. Rather, he can retrieve the deposit from the custodian in the custodian's own city. Because again, the custodian is doing the owner of the article a favor, whereas the lender is doing the borrower a favor. So if I'm giving you my article for safekeeping, I can't demand the terms. Gavin's doing me a favor as an unpaid custodian. Even as a paid custodian, yes, he's being paid, but he's still doing me a favor. So Gavin gets to dictate. It's different to a loan. Okay? So the custodian, if he's given a deposit, then in that particular case, the original owner must go to the city of the custodian where the arrangement first took place. So it's obvious he may not send the custodian home to retrieve the object. Even so, the Bryce obviously wouldn't have taught us that. But when does it occur? It could happen that the custodian has the actual deposit with him, and in that case, he can return it with him even in a different city. But we are saying that even if basically the custodian has an object in his possession that is precisely the same as the deposit or the same value, the depositor can't demand it in a place of the deposit that doesn't suit the custodian or demand that he take a similar object. Okay? Okay, so the Bryce doesn't really say whether the thief can be compelled to pay in the wilderness. But a thief is, in a way, identical to a borrower. How do we know? Is if somebody steals from you and you want to give them a chila and forgive them, and you don't want them to be locked up, they need to do you a favor as the original owner. So a thief is treated as a borrower, according to the Yad Shlomo. Okay? Now, let me just go to the next subject. So the Mishnah states, if he accepted the money or deposit on condition that he will go out to the wilderness to return it, he may return it to the owner in the wilderness. So the Gemara says, well, this is obvious. If a lender agreed to that stipulation, he's got to abide by it. Why must the Mishnah trouble to teach us this? And the Gemara says, no, listen, the Mishnah's ruling is necessary because it discusses a case where the depositor, upon leaving the deposit with the custodian, said to him, look, let this deposit remain with you, for I'm going now to the wilderness. And then the custodian said to the depositor, listen, I'm going to that same third world backhole of a country you're going to, and therefore I'm going to be there anyway. So let me meet you in the wilderness in a month's time, because I can look out for it while you're in the wilderness, but I'm going to meet you there in a month, and I've got to go there, and I'll give it to you in the wilderness. And if there wasn't any argument from the depositor, the custodian can return it to him in the wilderness. Why? Because he's using the phrase, if I wish to return it to you there, I will return it to you there. Meaning, he can compel the deposit to accept the return in the wilderness. Okay. So, basically, the Gemara is now answering that the Mishnah doesn't mean that he can explicitly stipulate that he's permitted to return the money or the deposit in the wilderness. Rather, listen, guys, he didn't make any stipulation at all. He simply informed the depositor that, like the depositor, he was going to be in that same third world backwater area. And therefore, the Mishnah considers his statement to be implying that he intends to return the money or the deposit there, and he's permitted to do so because the depositor has a head up. Okay? So it basically says, and the custodian said to the depositor, I too must go out into the wilderness, and I'm prepared to meet you there. If you want me to return it to you there, I will return it to you there. So Rashi is saying the final clause represents the conclusion of the custodian statement, that although he made no explicit stipulation regarding a return in the wilderness, he can compel the depositor to accept the property there because he's doing the depositor a favor. And it's different to it's different to a case when you are the borrower and the person's done you a favor. All right, so we finished that particular Mishnah. Do you have any questions, Kev?
No,
Damon, I have a question for you. Okay,
Sure.
give you go first.
No, you was. I was thinking of a question, but it's you went into it. So no, Arthur, go ahead.
Okay, I understand with money, it's not a problem meeting me in the wilderness. But what happens if he says, look, I'm going to be in this town. Can you return my cow to me in this town in the wilderness? You know, and so it's an animal that could be killed. Where would the responsibility lie if that was the agreement?
Okay, so I like Arthur's question. I just want to tweak it a bit because it's, nobody really falls in love with Betsy the cow and kills it and is going to find any purpose of grilling a steak when your dead cow lies before you. And also
he borrowed the cow to plow his field. Okay, now the guy moves to another town, into another wilderness area in like a month, and you got to bring that cow to that wilderness area. Let's say it's a 10-kilometer trek, whatever. You bring it there. Okay, and something happens to that cow on the way while you're bringing it to his cow, returning his cow that you borrowed.
Yeah, I get what Arthur's saying.
Well,
So
not
at
the
the
same
end
thing.
of the end of the day, the owner of the cow is putting the custodian at risk by demanding that he meets him in the wilderness, when in fact the cow might not be able to survive the journey. It might be an arduous journey. It could be the fact that the cow could be killed or stolen or whatever the case may be. And in fact, there's an undue risk to the custodian, which is not fair.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking, Art?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it could even be a donkey you borrowed, and you got to return it because you can ride a long distance, whatever.
Okay. So that's exactly why it says that if you are looking after an object for a person as a guardianship or a custodian, that you can demand the terms in terms of where you want the owner of that cow to meet you, because you're responsible for it. So since you're responsible, you can demand the terms. If, however, he lends you money, which he doesn't have to do, and he did you a massive favor, and he said, listen, I'm going to be in Zimbabwe. Without me, they'd take your house away from you. I'm saving you. So I want you to, I'm going to be stationed in Zimbabwe. I want you to come to Zimbabwe and return the money that you borrowed from me. So in that particular case, he can demand it because the lender has more leverage than the borrower, even if it puts the borrower at risk, because he did the massive favor to the borrower. However, I would suggest that probably before this conversation would happen, is that there should be an agreement where the borrower says, listen, I'm so grateful for what you've done. I don't want your money to be at risk, because if I had to borrow, it means if I get the money together, I'm not going to be able to afford to give it to you again. Otherwise, I wouldn't need to borrow from you in the first place. To scrape the money together itself is going to be an ordeal. And anything could happen to me, and you might hold me legally responsible. But if I can't get you the money, it's just going to end up in tears. So therefore, I know it's your right to dictate. But at the end of the day, even if I give it to you and I no longer have responsibility, who's to say you won't be robbed of the money at the point of transfer completion, and therefore you're still putting yourself at risk. Can we not exchange the money in a safer place? I think a conversation would have to be had. I think to me this makes a lot of sense. Am I making sense?
Okay.
That sometimes the law, unfortunately, the law defaults to people that are not prepared to have conversations. And that's where the law deteriorates. In other words, most cases, why do there are two reasons things end up in court, guys. The one is that somebody's trying to push their luck and steal or defraud you, and the other cases of misunderstanding. And that has to do with clear communication, expectation management, clear and concise terms and conditions, service delivery, payments. When all the parameters are ironed out and there's a reasonable negotiation and it's all put in writing, it's very unlikely, providing they service deliver and you get the right payments and the right balance, and everybody's trying to at least pay for a legitimate service and get a legitimate service, that it's not going to end up in court. Things end up in court. Even divorces happen when there's expectation failure compared to delivery failure from expectation. It's not met. Agreed or not agreed? Okay. So listen, we've got another Mishnah to hit. How long have we got left?
Let's check what time you sent the link.
Okay, so
Another 10 minutes or so.
I hear you.
Probably 11 minutes you have. You probably have 11 minutes left.
Okay, let me just see something here a second.
Or 12.
Damon's just summarizing the next stuff to see if he can deliver it in 11 minutes. How clever is he?
Now 10 minutes. There we go.
I've got
10 minutes now, Damon. You better hurry up on your summary there.
All right, so listen,
dropping to
I actually
9
think
minutes.
that I want to give this tomorrow because I think we've absorbed enough for one session. I can do another. By the way, Arthur, last night, I gave that half a duff over to you in how many minutes when we chatted last night?
About 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. I told them in the future, why don't you just come and just give it to me before the lesson and I can have the night off? He said, no, I must suffer like all of you. I said, okay. So he's very, very concise. It was kind of like I remembered a lot of it, but you know, when you asked me the question, what I remember, I don't know, I went blank. And when he started, then it started all coming back to me, like it's all coming back to me now. And then the refresh, it really helped.
Damon, if you can
and
do,
also,
if you can do,
night brilliantly.
It helps. Damon, if you can do all the shurim in like that in 4 minutes, we can do the whole of Shas in about 3 years. I've just worked it out.
You know, it'll be the busiest shir. I won't even see you guys on the screen. It'll be.
You'll be more popular than Rabbi Roddle. You'll be more popular than Rabbi Roddle, 100%.
There's a guy called Eli Stefanski in Israel that gives the 8-minute duff. Okay, there are thousands of people that go on it. Thousands.
Is it because they tough or because
give you another 2 minutes for free?
Yeah. Did you ever see that scene, something about Mary? With the
I think stop the recording, Damon.
No. We're not going to go into the hair gel scene.
No. We don't talk about that. The one guy says there's a thing called the 8-minute abs or something. So he says, I'm going to do the 6-minute abs. So the guy says, what happens if it doesn't work in 6 minutes? We'll send him the other 2 minutes for free. So the 8-minute duck doesn't work. We send another 2 minutes for free. It doesn't work.
Yeah. So Arthur and I went through it in about 4 or 5 minutes. The entire.
Yeah.
The entire.
Damon went through it, and I tried to absorb as much as I could.
With the Gemara and everything, so we can fly through it.
Damon, I don't know how you were pulling stuff up, like you were just casually talking in detail about everything and pulling up facts and numbers and everything. I was like, my mind was burning there with jealousy.
If you know a subject, very, very well, you can do that. You have to know it very, very well. Damon knows
by the way,
very, very well.
We actually get more better, more blessing than Damon, because we forced Damon to learn it so well
It's true.
Because you're a moron. Yeah, no, it's
No,
not
no,
right
no,
to
no,
pass
no,
it
no.
on
It's
to her.
true that Arthur brought up a good point is when you have to teach it, you force yourself to learn it far better than if you were just learning it for its own sake.
Listen,
Guys, we're going to end early.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't want to jam the other Mishnah, but I think sometimes more
Okay.
is less is more.
100%.
Yeah. So,
All right.
All right,
okay,
guys.
matey,
Thanks
guys.
so
Have a
much.
good night.
Yes.
Cheers, guys.
Talk to you later, guys.
Cheers.